And welcome to the first in my series of remote guided reading sessions on my channel, Mr. Shmas Teaches. First text, as the title has helpfully spoiled already, it's called Hunter Hunted. And the first thing you're going to need to do is follow the link in the description below to download the text. Give it a read, and then you'll also find a few questions to think about underneath it. It's up to you whether you want to try them out before watching the rest of the video, or to pause it between each one. I'm basically going to talk through the questions and probably some of the other features of the text. So now's the time to download and read the text, and the questions too, if you like. So hopefully by now you've read the text of Hunter Hunted. Perhaps you even enjoyed it. Perhaps it left you a little bit confused as to what was going on. Let's start with the basics about the text and check on your answers for the first few retrieval questions. Firstly, what is stopping the creature's hair from standing on end? Well, at the end of the second main paragraph, it's the thick sweat and blood. What colour are the creature's eyes? Hopefully you found the answer emerald green in the third paragraph. And which noise makes the creature first suspect it might be facing two enemies? Well, it's the small words in between each paragraph that represent the sounds being made, and in this case the creature first suspects two enemies just after the word rustle. Well, that's enough retrieval, I think. We're probably all warmed up now. So now many of the questions today are about evidence gathering across the text. We're really looking to find as many possible pieces of evidence as we can, so that we can then choose how best to answer the question. So what evidence is there to suggest the first creature is dangerous and used to fighting? Well, the fact that it's talking about dangerous and used to fighting, we might need to be looking for different evidence. And there's masses of it. At the very start, you might have picked up on its blood-stained teeth. Or maybe its midnight meal, now spread grimly across the frozen ground. I think that's a carcass of some poor unfortunate thing. But this guy doesn't sound a very dainty creature, does he? If he's spreading his meal everywhere. I can just imagine his face first in the blood and guts. Lovely stuff. Other evidence might include the creature working on instinct, making a subtle shift in its body position to better face two foes. A subtle shift means just a really very slight one, so a tiny adjustment that it can fight better now. If you spotted that one, then very well done. You might also have spotted his keen senses, or the club-like paws with its sharp claws. To get the full marks on this question, you'd be looking to explain some evidence for dangerous and some evidence for being used to fighting. Perhaps it's dangerous because of its sharp claws and keen senses. It's used to fighting because it's already eating another creature, and the text says it's working on instinct when it is under threat. By talking about both elements of the question, dangerous and used to fighting, and giving it some specific evidence, you're making sure that if it is a 3-mark question, you're covering all of the bases. Why do you think the single words, snap, crunch, etc. are getting larger? Well, I think their size represents the noise getting louder, which brings us on to one of the most interesting things about this text, actually. One of my favourite things about this text is the contrast in the language. You might have heard people use the phrase deafening silence. It talks about that moment when there's a very sudden and uncomfortable lack of noise, when previously maybe it had been noisy. It feels like the silence is sort of bouncing around your head, it's so intense. I think that's what's being suggested with that final single word, silence. Largest one, all capital letters, but actually the quietest actual noise. That's that deafening silence. This text actually uses that idea a couple of times. It talks about the near distance. Think about where that is. Is that far away, close, somewhere in the middle? If it's a threat that's that far, how threatened would you be? Another time the text talks about louder yet much quieter in style. Well, the creature's getting nearer, so it's getting louder. But what do you think it means by quieter in style then? Think about what that is. It seems to be a threat getting closer. Maybe that quieter in style is maybe trying to stay undetected. This extract is titled Hunter Hunted. I think the key to understanding this question is knowing what that slash normally means. Well, often it's used to suggest the word or. So we could maybe read the title as Hunter or Hunted, and that might give us a clue to the overall plot of the extract that we're reading. At the start of the text, our creature is a hunter, eating its meal. Fairly quickly, it starts to be hunted, and in fact at the end, the hunting comes to a rather vicious conclusion. A good answer here then will be one that recognises that the title has two key words, and that both need to be explained. At the start, the creature is a hunter, as it's eating its prey. In the rest of the text, it's being hunted by something else. Referring to both, and talking about the change, is where the second mark will come from. And if you're not sure, the text in yellow at the moment is where he is the hunter, and the text in blue where he is being hunted. Now we're looking for evidence that maybe this first creature is a werewolf. You might have picked up on the final line. The ghostly full moon is mentioned. Werewolves and full moons, plus the hint of the paranormal. Maybe also the opening where it talks about a midnight meal, when a werewolf would transform and go hunting. You might have picked up on a few wolf-like descriptions about the black claws, the blood-stained teeth. You might even have spotted some words that seemed a touch out of place for animals. The creature's arms are mentioned. Do many animals have arms? All of this together might form the evidence base for a good answer to this question. To construct this answer, you'd need to choose a piece of the evidence and not just quote it, but explain why you've included it. So here are two examples. I think the creature could be a werewolf because it talks about midnight and the full moon, and that is when werewolves transform. And that final part on the end, that's when werewolves transform, is a bit that explains why you chose that particular evidence. Another example, I think it could be a werewolf because it's described as having dark black claws like a wolf, but also a hunched figure and a crooked spine, so it isn't just a normal wolf. Again, the pieces of evidence I've chosen are helpful, but without me saying, so it isn't just a normal wolf, they don't really make it clear why I chose them. As you might have gathered by the rather flippant 100 marks available for this question, this one is difficult. Well, we are looking then for evidence that the original creature, the creature at the start, is the one that ultimately wins this fight. Well, part of this might come down to some of what we've already discussed. It's used to hunting and violence. It has claws, sharp teeth, all that stuff. Now let's look closely at those descriptions and see if there's anything to suggest it managed to use them. The key part of the text to look at first is, of course, the section with the fight. An explosion of sound and violence filled the night air. Tooth-ripped hair, claw-tore flesh, and heavy paw clubbed and smashed skull. So we have tooth-ripped hair. Well, one of the first things we read about was the creature's blood-stained teeth. Claw tore flesh. Again, earlier we heard about the creature's claws. Heavy paw clubbed and smashed skull. Well, once again, earlier the creature was described as having club-like paws. Even the order of that statement, yellow, blue, green, matches the order that those descriptions of the werewolf appeared in the text. And what about after the fight? We know our creature was alone, and that there was more than one of the others. And at the end here, only one creature limps away. Well, that was an exceptionally hard question, so if you came even close to picking up any of that stuff, very, very well done. You really won't face anything like that level of question in the SATs. But it's a discussion I've had before about this text with lots of kids, so why not talk about it here? Right, that brings us to an end of our first session. I hope you enjoyed the text. I hope you enjoyed having a go at it. Hopefully you had some success. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.